Unit 3 on land development discusses the functionality in AutoCAD Civil 3D 2010 that can be used for site development, and these include things like grading, parcels, alignments, and pipe networks, and roads and corridors. More of the emphasis will be on site design for subdivisions, but the concepts can also be applied to commercial site designs and other types of site layout. The first lesson in Unit 3 is on basic grading, and this lesson has some introductory exercises that expose you to the grading functionality in Civil 3D 2010. This will prepare you for a latter lesson where you learn how to grade an actual subdivision from corridors and some more complex grading features. In Exercise 1 for Lesson 1, you learn how to create feature lines and spot elevations. Exercise 2, you create a grading object, and in Exercise 3, you create a design surface. So a feature line is essentially a 3D polyline. It's not a 3D polyline, it's a civil 3D object that you can use to grade a site. And it's analogous to a 3D polyline in that it has vertex locations with elevations. And there are many different ways to create feature lines in Civil 3D. Let's just jump into the application here and we'll have a look. This right here is a feature line. So when I grip it, the contextual menu shows you that it is a feature line. If you right click, you get the elevation editor, a number of commands specific to feature line manipulation. If I click elevation editor, the panorama will display the elevation data along that feature line. And there are a number of commands that you can perform on these feature lines. If I click the first row, you can see how the vertex is highlighted based on the selection. And there's a number of things you can do here. Insert elevation points, delete elevation points, assign the elevations to a surface, and also on the contextual menu there are many commands that allow you to edit the geometry of the feature line, which is the horizontal geometry, or edit the elevations along the feature line. And these just give you different panels on the contextual menu for the manipulation of that feature line. This site here is a grading site. This right here is a polyline that was converted to a feature line for grading this three-dimensional site here. And we can talk about that in a moment. What you see here is actually a surface. But let's clip back to the PowerPoint. And points also can be used to grade a site. So you can set points using a number of different methods. If we were to go to the Home tab and under Points, you can see you have Create Points using slopes and distances and elevations and a number of tools here, and these can be incorporated into a final surface for a site. So and that's what we see here with these 2 points, how they're creating this surface. These points were used to create the surface along with this feature line. So the idea is that when you're grading a site, you're going to create objects such as feature lines and points, and grading objects that will be used to actually model that proposed design. In Exercise 2, there's a discussion on grading objects, and a grading object is a three-dimensional representation of a, perhaps in this example here, a building pad where you can project a slope down to a surface. In the drawing here, I'll just take this surface, modify the surface properties quickly, and we'll turn off the display of the surface by using a no display style. And that's what we see here. These are the grading objects. So if we were to take these into the three-dimensional view here, into the object viewer, and if we were to just view that in a 3-dimension and using 3D wireframe, you can see how that grading object models a building pad or some type of construction pad. This grading object here, if I right click And if I went into my grading editor, this was created using a distance criteria at -5%. Okay, so if we wanted to change that distance to 15 and press enter, you can see the grading object will recalculate. If we change the distance to 5, that grading object, that distance there recalculates. This grading object here, if I right click and went to my elevation editor or my grading editor, this is using a grading to a surface at a 3:1 slope. Well, if we change it to a 5:1 slope, you'll see the projection go out further. If you change it to a 1:1 slope. So these grading objects are all interactive. In this case, we have two grading objects, and they have been assembled in what's called a grading group. So if we go to Prospector here and into Sites, here's our grading group, and if I modify the properties of that grading group, this is where you can see that a surface has been created for that grading group, and a volume base surface has been calculated against, or created to calculate the volume between this grading group surface and this proposed surface. So if we go to the properties, you can see the volume of cut and fill, just a small, very small site obviously. And if we were to look at the feature lines here, you can see that feature lines are also collected in Prospector, and you can navigate and zoom to feature lines as well. But the surface is right here, and here's the grading group surface. If I go to Surface Properties and we display that surface as triangles and click OK, you can see how that surface has been triangulated. So that's the grading object, and when you create the grading object, the grading group once again is a collection of grading objects, and you can create a surface from grading objects within a grading group. In the example I just showed you, we had a single surface, or a single grading object, sorry, two grading objects and a single surface, and you can also calculate the volume within a grading group. And in exercise 3, you learn how to create a design surface for construction, staking data, and visualization. One of the functions that you can do to create a proposed surface is you can paste a surface into another surface, and so typically the functionality there is to, if you look at the proposed surface here and under definition, let's see here, not this surface, if we look to existing ground and under definition, you could right click and then paste this surface into the existing ground using the paste surface command, and that's a way of essentially joining two surfaces together. So that's the introduction to the feature lines and the grading functionality in AutoCAD Civil 3D 2010 that's discussed in Lesson 1.